site. I believe the password is Raiders exclamation point with the R's capitalized. Mine just goes in. It's under our TLC, no, it's under Professional Development District. I'll wait. That's you guys.
You might want to have that up just along the side, because later on you'll need to get there.
It's called Remote Learning. And that's where you can click on to get to, I think also maybe the principal sent it out at one point.
I was gonna say, is it different than what you sent out?
It is not different than what I sent out a couple days ago.
It's
The
just a
principal-
different place, so you don't have to dig through, you know.
That's what I have up.
Yep, this is what you have up, this is the right deal.
What's it called? SEL Wellness?
No.
Click on district, Bonnie.
District. Under professional development, you want me to go back on?
Yeah.
Kelly, if you're sitting beside her, you have to help her out.
Shut up, I'm putting on a youth size medium coat.
It looks good on you.
Yeah,
Yes.
district. Like before, you always went to elementary. I didn't want to do it
Will you
for
click just like show us? Click district to get to that thing.
Okay, so I'm gonna go all the way back.
Yep, the locky thing.
Go
Then you
down to
professional.
TLC.
Yep,
And then click on district.
and right here.
Yep. Okay, then right here. Oh,
And there are all the things you might use today.
okay.
Bonnie, did you find it?
Yeah, pretty much.
She doesn't look like she's looking either, so I mean.
Go down to the padlock.
I already did that.
Secure login? Should I come up like this, Lynn?
Yep.
Okay.
Look at these, here, tell me now.
I don't wanna buy anything from you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started so we can move along. The reason, or the purpose of today is thinking about if we were to be at home like we were last March. It wouldn't be an 8:45 on a Sunday and we don't come back ever and we don't have anything ready to go. What we really did in the spring was we didn't actually engage in distance learning. What we did was engage in pandemic learning or panic learning. And when I say we, it's not just us. Across the nation, all educators were panic learning or panic preparing. If I think about us and how it affected us as coaches, having to panic prepare PD, figuring out how to support teachers in that situation. Zoom was a freaking nightmare, but I finally figured it out after 3 months, I think. And now if we don't use it, I'll be upset because I got it down. Figuring out that PD using an agenda versus PD using a PowerPoint, kind of what worked with supporting teachers. Now you guys had to figure that out with your kids, how to best support them. Our purpose for today is if we have something in place and August 23rd at 8:45, the governor says, sorry, August 24th, we're not having school, then at least you have something prepared, or at least know how to better use the resources that we can give you today to plan the online learning. Okay?
The guidance we're getting from Mr. Cruz and the governor, though, most likely what will happen is second grade goes home for a week. And everybody else keeps going to school. So it probably won't be like a 4-month off again, but we could very easily be at home for a month or be at home for 3 weeks. Or one grade or one building.
So it won't feel as bad, I don't think, as the 3 or the 2.5 months that we were home. From what I understand, up to 14 days. Is that the guidance?
Well, it changes every day, so who knows?
Yeah.
And it will be required for the students to do instead of voluntary. There was more buy-in at the elementary, but I'm pretty sure, other high school and middle school teachers found a lack of engagement.
Yes, you could say that.
So we're gonna give you some tools today, give you some time to plan these online lessons, and just have them ready to roll just in case, or to use actually in your classroom, which is best practice. So quick little video here for you to get us thinking about best practices for online learning.
Instructional videos are powerful tools to enhance student learning at home. They allow students to learn at their own pace and free up time for teachers to support students individually. But too often, they lose their effectiveness because educators make common mistakes. Research has found that videos are often too long, too confusing, too unengaging. Avoid common pitfalls by following these 5 tips. The longer the video, the less likely students will pay attention. Research shows students start tuning out after about 6 minutes. Instead of having one long video, think about breaking a lesson into short segments. Too much text on screen can overwhelm students. Instead, use visual cues like arrows to indicate key concepts, and diagrams to help explain ideas. Students learn less when they listen passively. Throughout the video, encourage students to reflect and take notes. Check for understanding by incorporating questions in short quizzes. Organize your video into chapters. That way, students can find a section quickly when reviewing materials. Students will be more engaged if the video feels authentic. Use a casual tone and speak encouragingly. And remember to just be yourself. Make students feel like they are in your classroom.
So just some things to think about as we go through today and looking at the resources. The following slides came from a webinar that I sent out to the principals to send on. There's the link if you want it. It's by Fisher Friend, Hattie. Those are the Clarity. What's the word? Gurus. What they're suggesting is keep this simple and concise when you're planning online lessons. Focus on what the students know and don't know. Address social and emotional needs. We know that kids coming back, this is going to be larger than we can anticipate, I think. I know I have a lot of social and emotional needs from just being home. Thinking about the kiddos too.
I was at the doctor the other day for a checkup, and I see Kay Blessington, and she talked to me a little bit about what she's seen in her office from the kids. and she was really excited that the kids were gonna be back in school because of that, so. One of those ways you can do that is just that check-in. How are you feeling today? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Some of the PD we did this spring, they had like a wheel that you could pull off the internet where you label your feeling, like, and it even goes down to like, I'm frustrated, and it dials it down even more, overwhelmed. Just give them a chance to identify their feelings, and then what can they do to self-regulate that?
Real quick about that, Sammy.
Yep.
So I do a how you feeling thing, and I get a kid or 4 kids that are feeling really crappy. What do you do, not start class and deal with that, or, I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Just acknowledge, is it just an acknowledgement that you know how they're feeling?
And that you are someone that they
Uh-huh.
feel comfortable enough to be able to tell.
It might be one of those like, hey, I'm really concerned about this, and I wanna talk to you, so let me get class started, and then I'll find a few minutes and we can talk. Just so that they know that you know.
And you heard.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna see, I hope not, but I think we're gonna see things that maybe we haven't in the past, but. Another piece of advice is about ineffective approaches. It's the same for online and distance learning when you're creating lessons. Ineffective approaches to learning that you're using in the classroom are the same ineffective approaches in digital spaces as well. So we need to kind of keep that in mind as we're going through when we plan. This is that, the Hattie's effect size wheel. We talk about a lot about the teacher effects in the orange, red, I don't know what color, red color there. As you see, this is what the researchers are saying about the effect of distance education is 0.14. Now this is not saying that distance education is ineffective. What they want us to understand is that it's close to what the teacher affects is if the kids are right there. So this isn't supposed to be shown as a negative kind of thing. Yes, is it lower? Of course, it's going to be. The effect of online education is not the same as face-to-face, but they just wanted you to understand that it's close. It's not going to be the same, of course, but it's going to be hard to do anything over distance. We're going to do our best. So what does this all mean? The distance learning is not a negative thing. It's just the means to the same goals that you have in your classroom. It's the same decisions that we make with kids. We need to be able to listen to them think aloud online. We need to think about alternative strategies to help them out when we're doing online learning. And really reflecting on our impact on them as we're engaging in distance learning. So just some things to think about as we're going through today.
So technology isn't new. This has been, a long time coming. We've used it for lots of different things. But what we have to really be careful to balance is that we don't just use the technology for them to go out and gather information. John Hattie calls it Mr. Google and Mrs. Siri. But to try and find those ways to get them to do deeper thinking. And a lot of times, and I think our elementary teachers can attest to this from the IM training, the math training that we had, is when the students are doing the actual work. That's when that deeper thinking is going to happen. Okay. Back to that whole social emotional classroom climate. When we left in March, we already had relationships with our kids. We had a climate made. If we get pulled out of school 3 weeks into the year, we may or may not have those relationships real solid. We still need to be careful about those relationships online. We still need to try and establish those relationships online. And one thing to be careful about is that they talked about a study done for high achieving students and low achieving students. And low achieving students perceive that teachers don't give them feedback, whether it's positive or negative, they get less feedback. Teacher does not make eye contact, teacher does not call on them as much. but that relationship part is still gonna be huge on distance learning. And the next part that they talked about on this webinar was teachers' credibility. And it's made up, go to the next slide. You can see what kind of effect teachers' credibility has. Way over there in the blue, very high. And credibility is made up of these four areas. Trust. Does the student trust that the teacher has their best interest, that they care about them? Competence. Does the teacher know what they're doing? Dynamism is that passion for what you're doing, that professionalism, that am I excited? Or am I just, well, we're here. And then immediacy, how available are you to them? Can they get a hold of you? Can they, do they know you care? Can they get feedback from you? So this is just a little bit more about that dynamism. The one thing that I took away from this, they talked about, when you show up online, show up looking professional. I'm like, ooh, I didn't do a very good job of that in the spring. I was in my maybe still in my workout clothes, or maybe in my sweatshirt or whatever. So think about your appearance online. This goes back to kind of just be yourself. Like, be relatable. Be someone that they can relate to. Use we and us when you refer to the class. Invite students to provide feedback. What's working, what's not working. And then they call this the pop-up pedagogy. How to connect with families and kids even when you're not in the live session.
Okay, connection to worthwhile lessons. If you've been in the district for a while, you've heard lots about worthwhile lessons. If you were in the middle school and elementary this spring, you had PD over worthwhile lessons and clarity. So this would be linking the tasks, the assignments to a standard, to learning intentions, and to our success criteria. Communicate expectations would be the clarity. Do the students know what they are learning, why they are learning it, and what's the other one? How they will know when they are successful. This is just an example of success criteria, the learning target. This is a science class. I'm learning about the indicators of a healthy ecosystem, and there are two success criteria. So
And this-
just an example of how
Right,
to
this
work
was an
with it.
example of what someone did on online learning
We put this up for their kiddos.
for their kids.
And you might have that on the board in your classroom. Just remember when you're online to refer to it often so that students know. This is something that you could use if we ever go into online learning or remote learning. Learning intentions, what I will be learning. In the spring when we had PD with you, we just talked about content going across. But you could also talk about the language you want students to learn, even if you're not ELA teacher, and social, emotional as well down at the bottom. So learning intentions, what I will be learning, how will I know I'm learning, so what is the success criteria and the relevance, why am I doing this? And we have an example of that you can use later on today when you plan 3 sequential lessons. Okay, this is just a continuum of engagement. You'll notice that on both ends it's active and the students are active. Passive is in the middle. On the right-hand side, left-hand side, sorry. The students are active, but not in a good way. They're disengaged, so they're distracting others, disrupting the learning, trying to avoid the work. You want them on the right-hand side where they're participating, they're doing the work, paying attention, moving up to investing, they're asking questions, and ultimately you want them driving their own learning. So they're setting goals, they're asking for feedback, they're self-assessing.
And this comes from Buddy Berry. I don't know if I had the fortunate chance to hear him. A lot lot of the schools in the area have gone to some training with him. He's a principal in Kentucky, is it? Is he still principal or did he move up to something, superintendent? Anyway, he has a pretty dynamic school and they do some pretty innovative things.
And I would just guess, if I were to ask about the engagement of kiddos this last spring in online learning, we might tend to say they're on that active disengagement side. And that's not a fault of anybody, we just didn't know how to get them engaged, and hopefully we'll have some tools today to do that.
So we want the students participating and ultimately driving, and striving. So think about covering less so that they can dig deeper. Okay.
So here's our plan for today. You just did the overview, kind of that idea of why we're here today. We're going to show you how to get onto the micro-credential, how to navigate through the tools, and then you'll have time to explore those tools. We'll come back, we'll do a share out, we'll have lunch, and then you'll have work time in the afternoon. Yesterday, some of you used all that work time, some of them got done and left, so if that's kind of your time, it's pretty laid back today.
Yeah.
So that's the plan for today. Before we start, we're going to listen to a podcast, just about 4 minutes of a podcast, and I'm going to tell you that FFT, yes, that first F stands for what you think it does, but we couldn't get around it, so there's my public apology. But as we explore this new normal, there's some things to just always keep in your mind, and I think Brene Brown does a good job of helping us see maybe where our mindset could be during these times, and it's just good for life anyway. It might be useful for your kids, so we'll listen to this.
I would suggest letting your kids.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd let my elementary kids.
I might
listen.
not
We'll tell you this, uncomfortable.
Sorry.
And Brene Brown, she does a lot of work on social emotional. She's big in education. Maybe we'll listen to it.
Oh, come on.
Well,
Maybe we could do the norms first. While we're on it.
Yeah.
Well, it's buffering, just like any other professional development, just like your classroom. Norms for today. We know that high leverage practice is to create them together. So if you would talk with your table mate, what's something that could be a norm for today? And then we'll share out. So this is your chance to talk.
Here you go. It's a good one.
I am getting closer. There.
Anyone brave enough to give us a norm? Greg.
Having an open mind throughout the whole process.
Awesome.
Use technology purposes.
You said not, Abby and I always talked about that's one that we struggle with.
That's my first one when I go to training to put my phone down.
But you're also adults,
Yeah.
you know, you're professionals. So if you have a message that comes in that you have to deal with it. What else? talked about yesterday that would go along with this is try not to be judgmental. You know, we're all at different levels, we're at comfort levels, we all have different opinions about, this whole COVID thing in general, so I've noticed, especially in the last month, like on my social media and conversations, boy, do people get worked up about things. But we can add to that if you think of others. Any others?
Participate.
And I guess I would like you to be brave. We're gonna ask you to share, and so be brave and share. During these next few months, we're going to have to rely on each other because there's things that some of you are really good at that other people are gonna need to tap into. So, like writing poems. If you're, you know,
Right to Mr.
we're going right to Mr. Sexton.
Betsy DeVos one was my favorite.
Yeah, yeah, you're Betsy DeVos.
You can share the Betsy one if you'd like, that one was good too.
It's all right, we'll stay on task and
Okay,
I'll do that when we have a.
during lunch.
So here's Brene Brown on FFTs.
And I'm going to confess that I am 100% leaning into that strategy right now. The strategy is called the FFT. Now, if you're social distancing right now and you're home with your kids, and someone who filters the language they hear, I'd like for you to walk slowly and calmly to your phone and take it off speaker. I'm going to tell you what FFT stands for. You may not want to blast this, or you may want to. Take your phone and hold it up to your ear for just a sec. I'll give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, FFT stands for fucking first time. And right now, it is saving me. I am white knuckling about 5 different FFTs right now, and without this strategy, I'd be out of my mind. The first, most powerful part of the strategy is naming the FFT when you're in it. Hey, what is going on right now? Why do I feel out of control? Why do I feel like I don't know what I'm doing? Why am I in a shame spiral? Why am I so confused? I'm like, is this an FFT? I'm in an FFT. So naming it is key to understanding it because we're meaning-making species. We've got to have the meaning and we have to have language as a handle. So first we identify that we're in an FFT and we name it. Sometimes, and this is a really big myth, sometimes we're afraid to name experiences or feelings because we think naming them gives them power. And if we're feeling something hard or uncomfortable, the last thing we want to do is give it power. Let me dispel this myth now with 400,000 pieces of data and 20 years of research. When we name and own hard things, it does not give them power. It gives us power. And what do I mean by power? The best definition of power that I think exists in the world is from Martin Luther King Jr. Power is the ability to affect change and achieve purpose. So if we put it all together, when we name and own hard things, it doesn't give the hard things power. It gives us the power to affect change and achieve purpose. So if we can say, oh my God, this is hard because I'm in an FFT. Again, maybe it's something small like trying to fix my bangs or ride my new bike or your first, yoga with goats class or a new job or a new relationship. Why is this so hard? Oh, FFT, I'm in the FFT. And naming the FFT leads to 3 steps. 1, we can normalize it. Oh, this is exactly how new is supposed to feel. This is uncomfortable because brave is uncomfortable. 2, we can put it in perspective. This feeling is not permanent, and it doesn't mean I suck at everything. It means I'm in the middle of an FFT around this one thing. 3, I can reality check my expectations. This is gonna suck for a while. I'm not going to crush this right away. And if you're interested in teaching your kids the FFT strategy, you can always call it TFT, terrible first times. And remember, the thing to teach them is when you're in a TFT, when they're at that first gymnastics class or the first Spanish class or the first spelling bee or the first date or the first time driving, when you're in a TFT, a terrible first time, what you're trying to do is normalize it, put it in perspective, and reality check your expectations. A great example that I can give you around the FFT and being new is when you're newly sober and you're working a 12-step program or many of the other programs, people will say, you need to go to 6 meetings in 6 days, or you need to go to 10 meetings in 10 days. Well,
we'll stop it there, but, that naming it, make it normal, reality check, what was it? Put it in perspective. This one really spoke to me because the time I listened to it was right when we were in the middle of the return to learn plan. And I was having an FFT. So, this is our first time of living through a pandemic with kids, so I guess we have our radar strong, but I think we also need to think about grace for the year.
For each other and for kids.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna get into what our plan is for today, and that's around the lesson design of our remote learning or online learning. So first thing we need you to do is, it's in the PowerPoint, is to go to Skillforce, click on that link, and that will bring you to something like this. You all already have a login. It is your email address, and the password is skills1, but it's lowercase.
Brooke and Rebecca and Casey, it's probably still your maiden names. Sorry about that, but when I filled out the sheet in the spring, I wasn't sure what everybody's married name was. Well, actually, I didn't even take it out.
No, if you've already gone into it, it'll be the same. It's the same deal.
And you might want to bookmark that in your tools bar, your bookmark bar, so you can get to it easier.
No star right there. I think it's like 3 times from showing.
You might want to. So, Bonnie had a good question. Is this the same micro-credentials we used in professional development before? Yes. These are all through MISIC. However, MISIC has paired up with this company's Skillsforce, so it's all housed in one place, and there will be more micro-credentials being added from all over the country. It's just MISIC stuff. You can still get into micro-credentials on MISIC too, though.
Just a quick note or a helpful hint. If you two-finger click on one of your bookmarks up at the top on the bar, for example, welcome to ESAC, Abby two-finger clicked on, she's going to go down to edit.
I didn't know this existed.
Yeah. And instead of welcome to ESAC, she's going to make it ESC.
Am I?
Yes, do it. Save. That shortens it up, and then she can add more of the ones that she always uses up across the top. So she can go to NTC, Learning Zone, and just make it NTC.
Why is it today on this list?
Well, you never asked me.
You I didn't help you.
Do you need to see that again?
Yeah, do another one. Two fingers split.
I did it. A 2-finger clip.
Which two fingers?
These. What did you just do?
I used 2 fingers and I went down. I didn't click it twice. Are you on Chrome?
I did it. Look at the one though, it says ESC 12, K-12, you can't rename that.
Yeah, I don't know what that is though.
That's all the kids click on it and it'll show you all of those things.
Oh,
You
well,
can't take it out. You can't.
No, we can't rename
I think that's probably the people, tech people.